My mother always hated me. Not loudly, not in ways people could point to and call abuse. It was quieter than that, cleaner, more polite. The kind of hatred that hides behind smiles and compliments and only shows itself in the way you're never chosen. She preferred my sister, openly, without shame. And I grew up learning that love, in our house, had a ranking system. My name is Rachel Miller. I'm 32 years old. And for most of my life, I was never the daughter she wanted, only the daughter she used. From the time we were children, the difference was obvious. My sister, Emily, was golden. If she laughed, my mother laughed louder. If she cried, my mother rushed in like the house was on fire. If Emily failed a test, my mother blamed the teacher. If I succeeded, my mother said, "Well, that's expected." Emily was delicate. Emily was special. Emily needed protecting. I was strong. And it took me years to understand what that word really meant in her language. Strong meant I didn't need comfort. Strong meant I didn't need praise. Strong meant I could be ignored without guilt. My father existed in the background. Quiet, conflict avoidant, emotionally absent in the way only men who call it peacekeeping can be. He never defended me. He never attacked me either. He just watched. When we grew older, nothing changed. The roles simply evolved. Emily became the daughter my mother bragged about, her looks, her social life, her relationships. I became the daughter my mother relied on when something broke, when the Wi-Fi stopped working, when a bill didn't make sense, when a deadline was missed, when someone needed to figure it out. At 23, I moved out with nothing but a suitcase and exhaustion. I didn't announce it. No one tried to stop me. I worked constantly, 2 jobs at first. Late nights, early mornings. I studied finance because numbers felt safer than people. Numbers didn't lie. They didn't favor one sibling over another. And slowly, quietly, I built a life. I never told my family how well I was doing, not because I wanted to hide it, but because no one ever asked. Meanwhile, my mother continued treating me like the daughter who hadn't quite made it. And then something subtle started happening. My parents stopped arguing about money, disappeared. The credit card never maxed out. The car payments were always on time. Emily's lifestyle didn't match her income, but no one questioned it. They thought it was luck, or budgeting, or divine timing. The truth was simpler. It was me. Years earlier, my father had a medical scare. Nothing life-threatening, but serious enough to generate bills my mother pretended not to understand. I paid them. Quietly. Then Emily borrowed money and forgot to pay it back. I covered it. Then came the insurance, the utilities, the phone plans, the temporary help. I set everything up through automatic transfers, third-party payments, accounts my name never touched directly. No announcements, no credit, no gratitude. Because part of me still believed that being useful was the same as being loved, until the day my sister got engaged. My mother reacted like she'd just won something. She cried. She hugged Emily. She called relatives she hadn't spoken to in years. She posted photos everywhere. Then she turned to me and said, with that familiar tone, "You'll come to the engagement dinner, right? To help. Not celebrate. Not enjoy. Help." At the dinner, I sat near the end of the table while my mother praised Emily's ring, her fiancé, her future. Someone asked how they were managing the costs so easily. My mother smiled proudly and said, "We're just very organized." Emily added, "And I've always had support." I said nothing. A week later, my mother called me, irritated. "The bank is acting strange," she said. "Cards declining, payments bouncing. You understand these things. Take a look." I did, and I immediately knew why. The system I had built, the quiet financial scaffolding holding their entire lifestyle up, was no longer active. Not because it failed, because I turned it off. I didn't warn them. I didn't threaten them. I just stopped. 2 weeks later, the panic started. The health insurance was suspended. Emily's car payment was overdue. Credit cards hit their limit. My mother called crying, then angry, then accusing. "What did you do?" she demanded. I took a slow breath and said, I stopped fixing things you never thanked me for. Silence. She laughed, sharp, disbelieving. Don't be dramatic. You don't pay for anything important. I didn't argue. I just waited. Because the truth has a way of surfacing when money stops flowing. At first, my mother tried to pretend nothing was wrong. She called less frequently, spoke carefully, used that fake calm voice she always used when she was trying to stay in control. But cracks don't disappear just because you refuse to look at them. 3 days after the first declined payment, she showed up at my apartment unannounced. I knew it was her before I opened the door. She knocked the way she always did, sharp, impatient, like the world owed her immediate access. I opened it slowly. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not weak, just unsettled. Why didn't you answer my calls? She asked, stepping inside without waiting for permission. I closed the door behind her. I was busy, I said. She scoffed. Busy doing what? You don't even have kids. That sentence used to hurt me. This time, it just confirmed everything. She sat on my couch, arms crossed, scanning my apartment like she was trying to calculate how much my life was worth. This isn't the time to play games, Rachel, she said. Your father's insurance was suspended. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that is? Embarrassing. Not dangerous, not frightening, not harmful. Embarrassing. I sat across from her. You should call the insurance company, I said. Don't be smart with me. Her eyes narrowed. You understand these systems. Just fix it, like you always do. There it was. Not a request? An expectation? I'm not fixing it, I said calmly. She laughed, loud and sharp. Stop being dramatic. You don't pay for that. I held her gaze. I do. The silence that followed wasn't explosive. It was hollow. She stared at me like I'd just spoken in another language. That's not funny, she said slowly. I'm not joking. Her lips pressed together. You couldn't afford that. You've always struggled. That one landed. Not because it was true, but because she believed it so completely. I've been paying for it for years, I said, along with the credit cards, the utilities, Emily's car. Her face twisted in confusion, then irritation. You're exaggerating. I'm not. She stood up suddenly. You want attention. That's what this is. You're jealous of your sister, and now you're trying to make yourself important. I almost smiled. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't need her to believe me. You'll find out, I said quietly. She left angry, not convinced, not apologetic, just annoyed. That night, my sister called. Emily never called unless she wanted something. What did you tell Mom? She snapped. The truth. She laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable. You really think you're the reason things are falling apart? I know I am. Silence. Then, more quietly. So you're just stopping? Yes. You can't do that. I already did. Her voice shifted. You're punishing us. No, I said. I'm stepping out of a role you assigned me without asking. She exhaled sharply. You're being selfish. I almost laughed. Selfish. After years of paying for her life, 2 days later, the bank called them. Not me. And suddenly, the truth wasn't theoretical anymore. The credit card statements didn't match my mother's income. The payment history traced back to accounts she didn't recognize. My name. Everything led back to me. That was the moment panic replaced denial. My mother called again, this time crying. You let us believe we were fine, she sobbed. You let us rely on you. I closed my eyes. I didn't let you, I said. You assumed... She whispered my name like it was a plea. I raised you, she said. You owe me. There it was. The sentence that had ruled my entire life. I don't owe you my erasure, I replied. She hung up. The next day, my father called. He'd never called me alone before. I didn't know, he said quietly. About the money. I know, I replied. You could have said something. I did, I said. For years. You just didn't hear me. Silence. Then, softer. Your mother is struggling, I swallowed. I struggled too, I said, alone. That conversation ended without resolution, but something shifted, because now everyone knew the illusion was gone. Emily tried to downsize her wedding. Venues fell through. Friends backed away. My mother stopped bragging, and for the first time in my life, no one was calling me strong. They were calling me difficult, and I was okay with that. Because difficult women stop funding their own neglect. One evening, weeks later, my mother showed up again. No makeup, no perfume, just exhaustion. She sat quietly. I didn't know how much you did, she said finally. I waited. I didn't think you needed anything from us, she added. I nodded. That was the problem. She looked at me then, really looked. You could have told me you were hurting. I smiled sadly. You taught me not to. She didn't deny it. And that was the closest thing to accountability I'd ever get. I didn't forgive her that night. I didn't reconcile. I simply stood up and said, I'm done paying, but I'm not angry anymore. She left quietly. And when the door closed, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not guilt. Relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't useful. I was free. The real unraveling didn't happen loudly. It happened in fragments. A declined card at a restaurant. A utility notice taped to the door. A voicemail from a bank that stopped pretending to be polite. My mother didn't call me for help anymore. She couldn't. Because asking would mean admitting what she had spent years denying, that the daughter she despised had been holding their entire world together. Emily, on the other hand, spiraled. Without my quiet financial cushion, her life began to look exactly like what it was. Unsustainable. She called me late one night, voice shaking, trying to sound casual. Hey, do you think you could just help with one thing? I closed my eyes. One thing, I repeated. Just until things stabilize, she rushed. You don't understand how stressful this is. I almost laughed. I understand perfectly, I said. I've lived it for years. She snapped. So you're just going to let Mom drown? I paused. No, I said. I'm going to let her swim. She hung up on me. The next family gathering, a birthday dinner my mother insisted on hosting, was the most honest room I'd ever walked into. No decorations, no forced cheer, no pretending. My mother barely looked at me when I arrived. Emily sat stiffly, her confidence stripped down to something brittle and defensive. Halfway through dinner, my mother finally spoke. You could have handled this differently, she said, not looking at me.
So could
I set
you.
my fork down. Her jaw tightened. You've embarrassed this family, she snapped. People talk. They always did, I replied. You just didn't care when it was me. Emily slammed her glass down. You think you're some kind of hero now? I looked at her. No, I said. I think I'm finally done being the villain in your story. Silence. Then my father spoke. I checked the accounts, he said quietly. Everyone froze. They were all under Rachel's name, he continued. Every major payment, for years. My mother's face drained. You knew, she whispered. He nodded. I just never asked why. That sentence broke something open, because it proved what I'd always known. They didn't ignore me because they were blind. They ignored me because it was convenient. My mother stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor. You let me believe I was failing, she accused me. You let me believe I was invisible. Her voice cracked. I did everything for this family. No, I said gently. You did everything for one daughter. Emily shot up. Don't turn this into that. It always was that, I replied. My mother's shoulders sagged. For the first time, she looked old, not tired, exposed. You were never supposed to carry all that, she said quietly. I nodded. I know. And that was it. No apology, no embrace, no dramatic reconciliation, just truth, finally spoken. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt my life with the same precision I once used to manage theirs. I redirected my money, closed shared accounts, set boundaries that didn't bend. Emily moved back home, my parents downsized, and for the first time, their survival depended on their own choices, not mine. One afternoon, my mother sent me a message. Just this. Not a demand, not an accusation. I don't know how to be your mother without controlling you. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I replied, you can start by seeing me. She didn't respond, but she stopped calling me ungrateful. That was progress. I didn't win anything tangible. No inheritance, no apology tour, no redemption arc. What I gained was quieter. My own life, my own money, my own time. My own worth, no longer tied to how useful I was to people who never loved me fairly. I stopped being the family secret, the invisible provider, the silent fix, and in doing so, I cost them everything they thought was free, not out of revenge, but out of truth. If you're listening to this and you've ever been the one holding everyone together while being treated like you were nothing, let me tell you something I wish I'd known sooner. You are not selfish for stepping back. You are not cruel for choosing yourself, and you are not weak for refusing to fund your own neglect. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop paying the price for someone else's comfort and let them finally see who is really keeping the lights on. What I didn't expect was how quiet everything became afterward. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that feels unfamiliar, like a room you've lived in your whole life suddenly rearranged while you were gone. Without the constant emergencies, my phone stopped buzzing. No just one more thing. No late-night panic calls. No guilt disguised as concern. At first, I kept reaching for it anyway. Old habits don't disappear overnight. They linger. They whisper. They tell you that if no one needs you, maybe you don't matter. That was the lie my family trained into me. So I gave myself time. I sat alone in my apartment and let the silence exist without filling it with obligation. I relearned what my evenings looked like when they weren't spent solving problems that weren't mine. I slept more. I breathed slower. I stopped flinching every time my phone lit up. 3 weeks later, my father showed up at my door, not announced. Not dramatic, just standing there with his hands in his pockets, eyes tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. I didn't come to ask for anything, he said quickly. I just wanted to talk. I let him in. We sat at opposite ends of my couch, the distance between us heavier than the space itself. I should have protected you, he said after a long silence. I thought staying neutral meant staying out of harm. I shook my head slowly. Neutrality is a choice, I said. And it always favors the loudest person in the room. He nodded. I see that now. He didn't ask me to help. He didn't ask me to forgive. And that mattered. Before he left, he paused at the door. You know, he said quietly, your mother doesn't know how to talk to you without feeling exposed. I looked at him. That's not my responsibility anymore. He nodded again. I know. That was the closest thing to accountability I ever got from him. Emily didn't come. She sent messages instead, long ones, defensive ones, emotional ones that tried to rewrite history. You were always distant. You never needed us. You like playing the victim. I didn't respond, because silence isn't cruelty when it's protecting your sanity. 2 months after everything fell apart, my mother finally asked to meet me, not at home, not privately. She asked to meet at a cafe. Neutral ground. She arrived early, sitting stiffly with her hands wrapped around a coffee she hadn't touched. She didn't look angry. She looked uncertain. I don't know how to talk to you, she admitted. Every time I open my mouth, I realize how much I didn't see. I studied her face. I wasn't invisible, I said calmly. You just weren't looking. She swallowed hard. You made me feel powerless, she whispered. I nodded. That's how I felt my entire life. She didn't argue. That was new. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. I don't even know what I expect. I leaned back in my chair. Then don't expect anything, I said. Just be honest. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. For once, she didn't perform. We left separately. No hug, no closure bow. Just two people finally acknowledging the damage without pretending it didn't exist. And that was enough. I didn't rebuild my relationship with my family. I rebuilt myself. I invested my money into things that gave something back, not people who drained me and called it love. I traveled. I changed careers. I learned what it felt like to make decisions without asking myself how they would impact everyone else first. And slowly, the guilt faded. The reflex to apologize for existing disappeared. The need to prove my worth through usefulness died. Emily eventually stopped messaging. When you remove the benefits, entitlement loses interest. I don't hate my family. Hate requires energy I no longer give them. What I feel is clarity. They didn't fail me because they were broken. They failed me because it worked for them. And when it stopped working, when I stopped paying the emotional and financial cost of being unloved, the system collapsed. Not because I destroyed it, but because it was never sustainable without my silence. If you're hearing this and recognizing yourself in my story, if you're the one who pays, fixes, absorbs, forgives, and disappears, let me leave you with this. You are not obligated to keep people comfortable at the expense of your own dignity. Love is not proven by how much you endure, and walking away doesn't make you heartless. Sometimes it's the first honest thing you've ever done. I wasn't the family favorite, I was the family foundation. And when I stepped back, they finally felt the weight of what they lost, not because I punished them, but because I stopped saving them from themselves.